But IQ is not wisdom. Some people have a lot of knowledge, but knowledge is not wisdom. Right? You can say, well, if you got IQ and knowledge, you should be good. Not all the time. And some people will call that common sense, but not all the time is common sense great. What we're shooting for is wisdom. So I want you to think through your problem right now. Just think how big it is. Now I want you to do something else. I want you to stop, and I want you to think about your problem, but think of your problem from God's point of view. How big is that problem in God's eyes? How big is that problem when you look at it from God's view? You see, sometimes we try to rely on our own wisdom. Webster Dictionary says that wisdom says the ability to discern inner qualities and relationships, insights, good sense, judgment, a wise attitude, belief, or course of action, the teaching of the ancient wise men. That's what Webster says that wisdom is. I'm going to give you a better definition of wisdom today. I believe this is the greatest definition of wisdom. Wisdom is seeing life from God's perspective. I think that's wisdom. Looking at your life, looking at my life from God's perspective. When we look at it from God's perspective, it changes everything. Everything changes because God sees differently than us. He's got the bird's eye view from up on top. God sees, thank you, Miha. God sees our problems from up on top. So I'm going to go over a few things today that I want to cover, 4 things, and I want to show you what wisdom is. Wisdom sees problems from God's point of view. There is no problem that is too big for God. How many of you believe that today? There is no problem. I don't care what you're going through. It's not too big for God. I promise you that. It is not too big. The children of Israel, we're going to see in Numbers chapter 13, they're in the wilderness. They get to Canaan. It really, if they went straight through it, they could have got there in 7 days. They could have got to Canaan, the land that's flowing with milk and honey, the land that God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says, I'm going to give you that land. Your descendants will own it. So the children of Israel have been in captivity for years. They've been crying out to God, God, free us, God, free us. God frees them. He takes them on a little journey, and now they get to Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. And they're about ready to go in there. And that's what we're going to pick up because they have a big problem. They get there, and Moses says, I'm going to send up 12 spies to go look at the land. He says, I want you to go to the land, and I want you to check it out. So let's take a look at what's happening here. Numbers chapter 13, verses 16 through 20. He says, these are the name of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua. So right before that, he lists out the 12 people that are going. He says, then Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up this way into the south and go up to the mountains and see what the land is like. Now, here's what he tells me. He says, I want you to look at the land, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak. I want you to go there. I want you to see what the people look like. Are they strong or are they weak? Are they few or are there many? So not only what is their stature, how big, how strong they are, or how weak they are, how many of them are there? Is there a lot of them or very little? Whether the land they dwell in is good or bad. So then, not only looking at the people, I want you to look at the land. I want you to see what the land is like. Is it good? Is it fertile? Or is it bad? Whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds. Are they just like really weak cities? Or are these cities big? Are they fortified? Are they structured? Are they strong? Whether the land is rich or poor, or whether the forests are there or not. So is there forestry? Is there not? Then he tells them, be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land. He says, okay, I want you to go check out all these things, the people, the land, if they're fortified, if they're not. And not only that, I want you to bring back some fruit of the land. I want to see what it's like. He says, but be of good courage. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So it was the season for the grapes. He says, now I want you guys to go out there and check out this land. So they went up and spied out the land of the wilderness of Zin, as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up to the south and came to Hebron, Ahman, Sheshia, and Talmiah, and the descendants of Anak were there. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Then they came to the valley of Eshkelon, and there they cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes. Check this out. They cut down the branch with one cluster of grapes. They carried it between the two of them on a pole. It was so big they carried it on a pole between two people. They also brought some of the pomegranate and figs. The place was called the Valley of Eshkelon because of the cluster which the men of Israel cut down there. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. So imagine 40 days they're spying out the land. Now, I don't know how, if they don't stand out, if they look like the common man, but they're hiding out. Oh, they're going to know who we are. They're hiding out. 40 days they're checking out everything. So let's see what happens in verse 26. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. They come back and they show them all this fruit, like this grapes, like they're carrying it in between. Then they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey. And this is the fruit. They show them this is the fruit. Nevertheless, or you could put the word but. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities that you told us to check out, guess what? They're fortified and they're very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Anak, those descendants were huge. These were big people. Someone said that the Anaks, their average size bed was 14 feet. These were giants. He says, the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and Canaan and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the banks of the Jordan. So they come back with a report and they say, man, look at the fruit. Look how big the fruit is. But there's a problem. There's giants there, man. And the cities you told us to check out, they're really fortified. It's going to be hard to penetrate these things. And he says, oh, yeah, and the Anak lives there. The descendants of Anak, they're huge. So watch Caleb, because Caleb and Joshua was there. And it says, then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Caleb says, let's go get it. He says, but the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. So Caleb and Joshua, they say, hey, let's go take it. The majority, the other 10 say, no. We're not able to do it. They're bigger than we are. They're stronger than we are. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land the which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. In other words, they say, this land is massive. There's no way we can do it. It's going to devour us. It devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. So they're saying, man, we were there. You guys weren't there. We were there. These guys are huge. They're like Matt. They're tall guys. These guys are big dudes. He says, and there's no way. He says, there we saw the giants, the descendant of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, so we were in their sight. He says, when they looked at us, we were like grasshoppers. We were like this big compared to them. Now, are they given a report? Yes, they are. Are they given what they saw? Yes, they are. So we have two reports here. We have the majority report and we have the minority report. The majority report says, man, everything you told us to check out, the land is huge, the ground is fertile. Look at the grapes, they're huge. But there's no way that we can take this city. There's no way that we can overcome it. But on the other side, Caleb says, are you kidding me? Let's go take this land. God has given it to us. So the first thing I think we must do, if we want to have wisdom, we must see our problems from God's point of view. You have to look at your problem through God's point of view. That's why I said, think of your problem. When you look at your problem, and the longer you look at your problem, guess what happens to your problem? The bigger it gets. The more I stare like this at the problem, the bigger it gets. The more they thought about the size of the guys. You ever thought about something, people that have stories, especially fishing stories, right? People that go fishing, they catch a fish this size, and by the time they've told the story like 8 times, it's this big. Robbie does it all the time.
Robbie loves to fish, and Robbie says, oh, I caught a fish. It was this big. Yeah, right, Robbie. Yeah, right. No, I got a picture from 10 years ago, right? But no, but we look at our problems and we look at things, the more you stare at it, the bigger they become. You see, look at what they say. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land, they're strong. Are they lying? No, they're strong. He says, and the cities are fortified and very large. Are they lying? No, they're telling the truth. It's big. It's huge. He says, moreover, was the descendants of Anak there. In other words, these are giants. Are they lying? It's true. Listen, the problem you're facing, whatever you're seeing, is probably true. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by sea and along the banks of the Jordan. What they're saying is, everywhere you go around there, it's inhabited by giants. And are they lying? They're probably telling the truth. But the problem is, they're only looking at the problem through their own eyes. When you look at the problem in your eyes, it is going to be huge. But if you stop and put yourself in God's perspective, your problem is like a grasshopper to God. It is this big. Think about it. Your problem compared to creating the universe and maintaining the universe, I think you're just but this big. The problem is we got to know that God is with us. We have to look at our problems through God's point of view. God sees things a lot differently than we do. I just got to believe that. You see, you think of your biggest problem and you say, well, in God's hands, it's not that big. The problem is not too big. The problem is more your view of God is too small. Your problem's not too big. It's just that your view of God is too small. I'll tell you, sometimes you think about living the Christian life. I think about trying to live the Christian life. And I think, man, is it even possible? It's so hard because life comes at us so fast. And here's the reality. Your Christian life is impossible to live. It is. It's big. So your Christian life, your victory, does not come by how hard you try. Your victory is how much faith you put in the God who lived a perfect life, who knows what it takes to live a perfect life, and his name is Jesus. You see, when I look at my problems, if I look from God's view, I can say, man, God, I'm struggling in my walk with God. God, I thought I got rid of this, but it's still there. God, I'm struggling. God says, I know it's impossible, Mike, for you to live it. That's why I sent Jesus, who gave you a perfect example of how to live in this world with no sin. But now you got to trust me. You got to trust my word. You got to trust what I'm saying and quit looking at your problem from your eyes. I want you to look at your problem from God's eyes. It's a big difference when we look at from God's eyes. Look at Numbers chapter 14, verses 6 through 9. Because this is a different report. This is the minority report. Look at what happens. But Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, now we're in chapter 14, who are among those who had spied out the land, they tore their clothes. They're listening to the people say, oh, no, there's no way that we can take it. Oh, no, it's too impossible. It's impossible. Man, Caleb and Joshua, they're looking at him, and they're like, are you kidding me? They start tearing their clothes. No, stop. Look, we're there. They're like, no, stop. He says, and they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is exceedingly good land. It is good land. Now watch this. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us. A land which flows with milk and honey. These guys, they don't see how big their people are. They don't see how fortified they are. What they see is a God who, when it's fortified, he can tumble it with one breath, with one finger movement, everything will come down. They're looking and they're concentrating on the God who says, I don't care how big they are, because the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Because if God is for us, who can be against us? So Caleb and Joshua are saying, let's go take that land. It belongs to us. Let's go get it. He says, only do not rebel against the Lord. Now watch what he says, nor fear the people of the land. Don't be afraid of the people of the land, for they are our bread. I love what he says, for they are our bread. You know what he's saying? we're going to eat them for breakfast. When it comes to God, if God's for us, they're our bread, man. Let's get the peanut butter, start spreading. We're going to eat them up like peanut butter and jelly. They are nothing to us. They are like bread to God. You see, because they're seeing from God's eyes. When they see their problem from God's eyes, they say, man, we're going to eat this for breakfast. I can't wait. They're probably looking at that grape and saying, I can't wait to get to that grape, smash it all together and make jelly, and then peanut butter and jelly on my bread. Because they're like bread. He says, only do not rebel against the Lord, nor feel the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. What's the difference between the two reports? Is one of them, the 10, the majority, are looking at the problem through their eyes, and it looks like they'll never have victory. The other one, the other two are saying, victory is ours because they're looking at it from God's eyes. Guys, whatever problem you're going through, relax. Look at it through God's eyes. God, I don't know when or how or where, but you said you would take care of me, and I'm counting on your blessings. I say go take it. I say go make it happen. Guys, in our church, as I was reading this, I was thinking through our church at our 11 o'clock service. I knew we had families out last week for the 4th of July, and I figured that we would have a less attendance, but the church was packed. We had to bring in chairs, and statistics tell us that when you get to 80%, people will start leaving because the church is too packed and there's no place to park. And so we got a real problem. We have a problem of space, and it's been pressing on me. It's been pressing on me like, what do I do? How do we make space? What are we going to do for this? But I'm trusting God. So this week, there's a gentleman that Pastor Older and I know. We're asking a guy, he's got over 1,000 acres. We asked him to give us 10 acres. He said, 10 acres, we'll be happy with 5. I'm not asking you to sell it to us. I'm asking you to give it to us. I'm asking for God to do things because I know that God will. There's a church at the end of the road, the Methodist church down there I've been calling because they got a building that's empty. That big old building there, it can almost double our size. It's empty. And they've never finished it out. So I'm asking God to give us that building. So I finally got a hold of the pastor. He called me back, and we're talking, I think in 2 weeks, we're talking about us seeing what the vision looks like. I typed up my vision, where we're going. We're putting together what it would look like if we were to go over there to that building as well. But guys, my point is this, that I see a problem, but all my pressure is gone because I'm depending on God. When I look at it from God's eyes, he knows what he's doing. Guys, whatever problem you came in here with, God's eyes, if you look from God's point of view, he's doing something. He might use your problem. Here's what I found out. Whenever a problem comes, it's normally God. Not that things happen by nature. I've been asked this question a lot, the things in Kerrville. Why would God allow something like that to happen to Kerrville? And it's funny how they don't attribute anything to God, but when something goes bad, is why did God? Now they want to attribute it to God. But the reality is, nature's nature. We live in a sin-sick world. The Bible says that all creation groans for the return of the Lord. That not only do we groan for the return of the Lord through our bodies, but nature itself groans for the return of the Lord. So nature has its course, and this is part of it groaning. Now, things happen, but what I do know, in the middle of things like this, God is moving. God's going to show us something, and he's going to be glorified some way or another. I just trust God. Things happen in our lives. We had an individual last week that came to our service. She lost her 16-year-old boy. He was on a senior trip, fell off a truck when they were doing a senior event thing, and cracked his head open and ended up passing away. But she was at church Sunday. You know why she was here? She wanted the congregation to know, even though this has happened, God has never left her. And she was at church worshiping God. I had her come up front last Sunday because I wanted everybody to see, listen, God still moves. God's still alive. She says, I don't know why it's happened, Mike, but God's there. God's there. I had someone just this week, they lost their daughter 5 days, and they lost their daughter. The daughter was there, and then they got up one morning to check on the baby, and the baby was dead. 5 days. The lady says, you know, Pastor Mike, it was so hard. Every day, she says, even till this day, I cry. I cry for my little girl. She says, it was the hardest thing that ever happened to me. She says, but when she died, I was asking God, why? She said, but I'll tell you what happened in that. She says, I got really bad, and I got away from the Lord. But then God got a hold of me and showed me he was there. She goes, I got baptized, gave my life to the Lord, got baptized. My husband left the life that he was living, got saved, got baptized. My children got baptized. She has 3, all of them got baptized and saved. She says, I don't know why God gave me a little girl. In 5 days, he took her. But I thank God for her because my whole family's saved because of that little girl. She says, when I get to heaven, and she asked me, Mom, what did you do after I left? I'm going to tell her the greatest thing that ever happened is because of you, our whole family came to know the Lord, and we're here today. She was thanking God. Now, guys, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if you, I just know that only God can do that through somebody. I just know that she was there that day on Thursday at my house praising God and thanking God. She says, oh, I wish my daughter was here. I wish I still had my daughter. But praise the Lord, my family is saved and we'll all see her again. You see, we have to look at our problems through God's eyes. Because when you do that, they look differently. Number 2, wisdom sees time from God's point of view. Time through God's point of view. Look at this. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. You remember Moses? He said, you could be at Pharaoh's kingdom. He says he refused it, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Moses says, I know I can go there, and I can have all the pleasures of the world. I can be Pharaoh's son. Everything he has belongs to me. Moses says, I don't want to take that. I refuse to take that. He says, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Moses put his eyes in time in God's perspective. He says, I can have everything now, but I'll lose everything in eternity. I'd rather gain my eternity and lose everything here. Guys, sometimes we look at the stuff in our world, we look at things here, but what really matters and what's most important is the thing at the moment is what we say a lot of times. Oh, it's only important now. A years from now, is it important? Think of the most important thing in your life. Think of something that's the most important thing in your life right now. In a million years, is it still going to be important? Oh, man, that car is just, man, the most important thing to me is my house, having my house. Man, if I could just get that house, that's the most important thing to me, just having this house. Really? In a million years, is it going to be worth anything? I always tell people, man, that house you love, I promise you there's going to be another time in life, if the Lord doesn't come, someone else is going to live in your home. We're only borrowing it. We can't take it with us to eternity. The Bible says there's 3 things that are eternal. God, his word, and the souls of men. So if we're going to invest in 3 things, we got to invest in those things because they last for eternity. You see, guys, I do what I do because I love you guys, but I love the Lord as well, but I'm looking past today, and I know that my reward is in heaven. I don't know how the reward system works in heaven, but God says there's rewards for those that diligently seek him. I'm going after every piece of reward I can have. I want to walk by Austin and say, you don't have one of these, Austin? Come on, man, I got it. What happened? I want to serve the Lord with everything that I have because my reward is in heaven. I don't want to look at time the way I look at time. I want to look at time through God's eyes. And I want to invest in the things that are important to God. There's people that worry about stuff all the time, right? Worry warts never get anything done. It reminds me of a guy that was going to get his hair cut. And he's sitting there with the barber, and the barber says, hey, so what are you doing? He says, man, I'm going to go to Rome next week. He says, man, don't go to Rome, man. He says, it stinks over there. He said, Rome is horrible, man. He said, it's terrible. He says, what airline are you going on? He says, I'm taking Southwest. He goes, don't go on Southwest, man. He says, they don't treat you good. Man, the food is terrible. You're probably going to get there late. In fact, if it's going to get hijacked, it's going to be Southwest. He says, I wouldn't take Southwest I wouldn't go there for nothing through Southwest. He goes, really? He says, but what were you going to do in Rome anyway? He says, I wanted to see the Pope. The guy started laughing. He said, you're going to see the Pope? There's 150,000 people there. You're not going to see him, man. Don't waste your time on the trip. Well, the guy left, and he went on his trip. He comes back and to get his hair cut about 3 weeks later, and the barber says, hey, did you go to Rome? He says, man, I went to Rome. He says, there was flowers. It smelled so pretty. He said, Rome was just awesome. It was incredible. He says, yeah, but you probably got there late, right? The flight, he goes, oh, no, man. He says, Southwest had a special that time. He said, they fed us lobster or filet mignon, whichever you wanted. He says, it was incredible. He says, the flight got there on time. My baggage was perfect. I mean, everything was perfect. My place I stayed, it was awesome. He goes, yeah, but I'm sure you didn't get to see the Pope. He goes, let me tell you what happened. He said, we were in Rome, and all of a sudden this guy comes up, taps me on the shoulder, and says, hey, can you come with me? We went up to the 5th floor. He says, and on that floor, I went into a room, and there's the Pope. He goes, really? He says, yeah, and I asked the Pope, why did you choose me? He says, because I looked out in the crowd, and I said, man, that poor guy, look at his ugly haircut. He's got to come up here. Some people are just so negative, right? They don't see it from the right perspective. Listen, guys, we need to look at time from God's perspective. We got to invest in things that are eternal. The things that are eternal are important. So many times we think so negative, and God wants us to think positive. Here's the third thing, because time is flying. Wisdom sees possessions from God's point of view. What do you possess? Sometimes our possessions are number one. I got to have this. I got to have that. Listen, the only thing we need is Jesus Christ in our life. Look what the Bible says. I was looking in Revelations the other day, and look what the church of Smyrna says. And to the angel of the church of Smyrna, write these things, says the first and the last, who was dead and has came to life. Watch what he says. I know your works, tribulation, and poverty. Smyrna was a place that they were poor. But Jesus says, but you are rich. He says, and I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. So they're surrounded by stuff against them. They're poor. They're in tribulation. But Jesus looks at them and says, but you're rich. You know why? Because he's seeing what they have in heaven. You've been faithful to me. Look at this Laodicea, the difference between them. Just go down a few, chapter 3, verse 17. Because you say, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need for nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. These guys have everything according to the earth. According to the possessions of the earth, they have money, they have everything. He says, you know what? You're blind, you're wretched, you're miserable, and you're poor. You have nothing. I wrote something down. It says, I wrote this, and I got this from Warren Wisby. He said, whatever a man attempts to achieve without God, he's destined to fail miserably or succeed even more miserably. Let me read that again. It makes sense when you, whatever a man attempts to achieve without God, he's destined to fail miserably or succeed even more miserably. Guys, sometimes we'll succeed, but we'll be miserable. I was looking up the suicide rates in Texas, and the top 5 suicide places for teen suicide is in the 5 most affluent cities in Texas. These guys have money. They have everything money can buy, but they have the highest suicide rate amongst their teens. You see, because they put their faith in their possessions, and our faith needs to be in things of God, not in our things. You see, wisdom sees problems from God's point of view. Wisdom sees time from God's point of view. Wisdom sees possessions from God's point of view. And wisdom sees people from God's point of view. You remember when they were looking to find the next king? It says in 1 Samuel 16:7, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Guys, God is looking at your heart. It's not about how well you look. It's not about what people think of you. It's what does God think of you. You know, I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I don't care. I've had people just this week say, Mike, why aren't you taking this job? Why aren't you working it? Why won't you come work for me? I just don't get it. I don't care what they say. Man, Mike, we'll take care of you financially. No, you won't. God takes care of me financially. I don't